Try this test. You are standing in the desert at dawn, facing a limestone block that weighs more than a herd of cattle. No engines, no cranes, no steel cables. You have to move it 10 kilometers to the river, then hundreds more to a building site. What matters more, muscle, math, or management? Because the pyramids were not built by mystery technology. They were built by an economy that could turn stone into schedules, food into labor, and records into control. Egyptian stone transport is a story about ramps and sledges, yes. But underneath that is a deeper machine. Organization. We set the scene around the Old Kingdom, when royal building projects reached industrial scale. The question is simple and sharp. How does a pre-industrial state move mountains without collapsing under the cost? Start at the quarry. The sun is low and the air is cool enough to work. Teams chip at bedrock with copper tools and stone hammers. Wedges open cracks, levers pry blocks free. Dust hangs in, the light. A foreman watches edges and angles because a mistake here multiplies later. But here's the twist. The quarry is not just a work site. It is a tax office made physical. Every block removed is a claim on grain, beer, rope, timber, and time. Stone is not free. It is converted wealth. So the first economic problem is supply. Egypt's supply base is the Nile Valley. Predictable floods, concentrated farmland, and the ability to store grain. When harvests are good, the state collects surpluses. Those surpluses become wages, rations, and bargaining power. A pyramid, in that sense, is stored food reshaped into architecture. Now, move one step forward. The labor force. Most workers are not permanently enslaved. Many are drafted through corvée labor, called up when farming is slow or the flood season changes what is possible. Skilled crews, stone cutters, carpenters, rope makers work alongside rotating labor gangs. It is a mixed workforce, specialists and seasonal bodies. In the workers' village, you see the real engine. Bread ovens smoke, beer jars line up. Someone repairs sandals, someone treats a blister. These are not extras. They are logistics. If you want 1,000 people to pull stone tomorrow, you must feed 1,000 people tonight. A scribe sits nearby with a palette and reed pen. He records who reported, who is sick, who received rations, and how many ropes were issued. The scribe is not a spectator. He is a control system. Without records, a project of this size dissolves into loss. Now, the block has been cut. How does it move? Picture a wooden sledge under the stone, runners smoothed, ropes tied in thick bundles. The sledge is a simple technology with a big advantage. It spreads weight and reduces friction compared to dragging a bare block. The ground matters. Workers clear a path, sometimes laying timbers or smoothing rubble. Then comes the detail most people remember. Water. A small team wets the sand ahead of the sledge. Not a flood, just enough to change the texture. Damp sand can hold shape and reduce drag, turning a stubborn pull into a manageable slide. The point is not magic. The point is control of friction, achieved with a cheap input, water, that Egypt can supply. The pull begins. Dozens of men lean into ropes. A chant sets rhythm. A leader signals pace. Too fast and the sledge jolts. Too slow and momentum dies. Movement is coordination. It is also morale. If the pull feels endless, effort collapses. So the system breaks the journey into stages, with pauses, water, and supervision. Here is where everything quietly starts to break. Rope. Rope is consumable capital. It frays, snaps, and fails under load. Producing it requires fibers, labor, and skill. So the project must maintain rope production like an army maintains arrows. If rope fails at the wrong moment, you lose time, and time is your most expensive resource. Walk closer and you notice the small details that make pulling possible. A hauling crew is not a random crowd. It is arranged in teams with leaders, with rope handlers on the sides to prevent drift, and with spotters watching the runners. When the sledge reaches a bend, men shift their positions like rowers, not like rioters. Coordination reduces waste, and waste is what breaks backs. There is also maintenance. Runners are re-smoothed. Ropes are checked for weak strands. The track is swept of stones that could bite into wood. These tasks look minor, but they turn a one-time stunt into a repeatable process. The pyramid is repetition. Now add a second layer of transport. Different stones, different routes. Limestone might come from nearby quarries, but harder stones, granite for chambers, basalt for floors, often come from far to the south. That means the river is not optional. It is the spine. Quarry crews at places like Aswan cut blocks and shape them close to the source, because transporting waste is the most expensive mistake. Only then are blocks slid to the water, loaded onto barges, and brought north with seasonal flows. Loading is its own engineering. Ramps and slipways guide stone onto decks. Balance matters. A barge that lists can sink. Crews use poles, ropes, and careful sequencing, moving one block at a time like pieces on a board. The safest method is also the slowest, and slow is cheaper than disaster. While stones move, the paperwork moves too. A shipment is counted at departure, counted at arrival, and counted again when placed. This is how a palace prevents pilfering and excuses. If a foreman claims delays, a record can test him. If a village sends fewer men, a record can shame it. Administration is not merely written, it is enforced through comparison. And here is where the economy becomes visible. The state is not paying only for transport, it is paying for stability. Grain storage buffers bad months. Rations keep families alive while men are away. Medical care keeps specialists productive. Even the calendar matters, because labor must not collide with the moment when fields need hands. But here's the second twist. A project this large changes society. When thousands gather, markets appear. Traders sell onions, fish, extra beer, tools, charms, and cloth. Small profits accumulate around the work site. Some workers become permanent because opportunity is now located at the monument, not the village. A state project becomes a regional economy. That brings benefits, but it also creates fragility. If leadership weakens, funding stops. If floods disappoint, surplus shrinks. If provincial elites keep more grain, fewer men arrive. Monumental building is therefore a sensitive indicator. It rises with centralized confidence and falls when the center can no longer command resources without resistance. You can see that pattern in the long arc. Periods of strong kingship build big, because the bureaucracy can count, collect, and coordinate. Periods of fragmentation build small, because transport is not just physics, it is authority. Modern warehouses use scanners. Egypt used scribes. Modern cranes use hydraulics. Egypt used ramps. The principle is identical. Reduce uncertainty, standardize routines, and make the next delivery predictable for everyone. Now look at ramps. Ramps are not one thing. They are a family of solutions: straight ramps, zigzag ramps, spiral ramps, and small step ramps built as the structure rises. Each option trades materials for slope. A gentle slope is easier to haul but requires more ramp volume. A steep slope saves material but increases force, accidents, and risk. Egypt's genius was not choosing one perfect ramp. It was building ramp systems that could evolve with height, site constraints, and available materials. Mud brick, rubble, and limestone chips become temporary infrastructure, investment that is later dismantled or absorbed. Ramps also expose the administrative heart of the project. You cannot improvise a ramp at scale. You need quarry output matched to ramp capacity, matched to labor availability, matched to flood seasons, matched to storage. That is scheduling, an idea as old as the pyramid itself. Now move the story to the river. Egypt's greatest transport technology is not the sledge, it is the Nile. Once a block reaches a canal or harbor basin, it can be floated. Barges carry weight that land transport would punish. The river turns distance into drift. But river transport has its own economy. You need boats, crews, and docks. You need timing with water levels. You need canals cut and maintained. You need guards because valuable cargo invites theft. Again, the state's job is to make movement predictable enough that planners can promise delivery. At the building site, stones arrive like inventory. A receiving team checks dimensions. A foreman assigns placement. A scribe updates counts. A team prepares mortar, levels surfaces, and guides the block into position. This is where the cinematic myth often hides the real story. The final placement is impressive, but the bigger miracle is that blocks keep arriving day after day for years. That requires a stable fiscal system. So how did Egypt pay? Not primarily in coins. Much of this economy is paid in kind: grain, beer, meat on special days, cloth, and housing. Payment is not just reward. It is measurement. Standard rations make labor legible. When a crew receives rations, it means they exist, they worked, and someone is accountable. The state also uses status. Titles, honors, and proximity to royal projects matter. Skilled workers gain reputation. Foremen gain authority. Even in a ration economy, prestige is a motivator. Now compare Egypt to another ancient system, Mesopotamia. Mesopotamian cities also used temple and palace institutions to collect grain and mobilize labor, but their river systems were less predictable, and political fragmentation was sharper. Egypt's advantage is geographic. 1. Long corridor, one primary river, fewer competing centers. That geography makes central coordination cheaper. But that same geography contains a risk. When the Nile flood fails, the entire machine tightens. Less surplus means fewer rations, fewer labor days, and more tension between center and province. A pyramid is a luxury built on reliable nature. When nature turns volatile, the project becomes a political liability. Now the part most people miss. Transport is a mirror of inequality. If you can command labor, you can command stone. Pharaohs and elite administrators turn peasant time into monuments. Villages provide bodies, while officials provide oversight. The system can feel reciprocal: work for rations, service for stability. But it is not equal. The ability to say, pull, and have hundreds pull is the definition of power. Yet the system also created competence. It trained managers, standardized measures, improved boat building, and strengthened storage. Large projects can be extractive, but they can also build capacity. Egypt's building economy was both. So what should we take from ramps and sledges? First, engineering is always social. A sledge works only if you have ropes, water, cleared paths, and disciplined teams. The physics is simple. The coordination is not. Second, logistics creates durability. Stones last because systems delivered them. When the system weakens, through fiscal strain, regional elites, or environmental shocks, monumental building declines, and that decline is itself a signal of state capacity. Third, records are power. In Egypt, the person who counts grain and labor controls the flow. Accounting is not a boring detail. It is the skeleton of the project. Use this checklist to read any ancient mega-project. Call it pull, float, count. Pull. How do they move weight on land? Sledges, animals, rollers, roads, and what inputs wear out? Float. How do they exploit water? Rivers, canals, harbors, and what seasonal? Constraints rule timing? Count. Who records labor and rations, scribes, temples, palaces, and how does payment enforce discipline? Return to the dawn quarry. The block is still there, silent and heavy. Now you can see the real solution. Not aliens, not miracles. A state that could store food, mobilize people, manage friction, and keep records tight enough that stone arrived on schedule.